lot of that. I talked about the fact that a lot of your members are in no way related to the general aviation industry. They don't own planes, they don't fly on planes necessary, but they do recognize that strong connection between the general aviation airplane and the general aviation airport and the health and well-being of a community, in a lot of ways, a way of life. What are you seeing and feeling from your members as these proposals have come forward? Do they feel concerned about the attacks on general aviation?
They do, and in fact, in many ways, they understand it in a more comprehensive ways than sometimes some of us do, because you know, a mayor of a small town out in Virginia, or outside of Dubuque, Iowa, or any other small town really understands how businesses and humanitarian aid and medical care and law enforcement and all of these services and resources really depend on general aviation. And so they have been calling us and saying, what can we do? How can we get out the message about how important general aviation is to our community and why is it under attack?
And that's what I think was so interesting with the latest proposal on the $100 user fee. It seemed like that came out, and in a nanosecond, the Alliance for Aviation Across America had mayors from 44 different states weighing in on that issue. So when I think about the great work that the Alliance has done, having 2/3 of our nation's governors sign proclamations is one thing. You can build on that. But to have mayors from 48 different states almost immediately signing on, just a real tribute, I think, to your organization and the work it does, but also the depth of enthusiasm there is, not just in the general aviation community, but those outside it as well.
It is. It really is a tribute to the depth of enthusiasm that's out there among the mayors and among all the non-aviation officials and members in our alliance. We had a press call a couple weeks ago to launch sort of this mayor's letter, and we had a mayor council from Virginia who came on the line and talked about how when they had a local mill that broke down in their small town, it was general aviation that came to the rescue, bringing the critically needed parts and personnel experts to that location to get them back up and running and save them so much money and lost revenue. And these are the real life stories, and these are the real life connections to general aviation that these elected officials and members of ours feel in their day-to-day lives. And I think it's just so important for us to do everything that we can to support them getting that message out there. It's certainly something that our members of Congress and the White House need to hear.
You know,
in the event that we may move along, I think it's important to say of the user fee proposal that while it comes out of an administration, I can say this, other officials can't, current officials can't. There's no reason to believe it came out of the FAA or the Department of Transportation. The Congress has so repudiated the idea that some of us sort of talking about this earlier, saying, well, we managed to solve the user fee issue to get it out of the Senate bill. Now they're going to tax millionaires, so we're sorry to any millionaires who might be offended, but I'm not sure that's going to pass either. But this revenue mechanism that's in an economic plan that the president once voted on, but as it pertains to user fees, is kind of a gimmick. And we said to the administration, all of us, a couple of years ago, that if you're going to go forward with a proposal like this, we have no choice. We will fight it. If you put it aside, we'll work with the administration. And not just because he's sitting here, but particularly because he's here, I think all of us have found that working closely with Administrator Randy Babbitt has been tremendously worthwhile and important on the many things we want to work with the administration on, from next gen to pilot population to airports, and that this hopefully is no more than a distraction, and we can continue to get the good work done that we really want to work on. So.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. There's a lot our community needs to come together on so we can move forward, and we don't need debilitating or distracting fights. But we've got to fight the ones we have. And Pete, you know that in addition to the user fees, we've also heard a lot of talk about eliminating bonus depreciation, lengthening depreciation schedules, maybe getting rid of depreciation altogether. And it's a little bit esoteric and technical, but the fact of the matter is, we know shorter depreciation schedules work. Tell us what you've seen in terms of stimulus when we've shortened depreciation schedules, allowed the bonus depreciation as our community has tried to recover both from the economic recession of 2001 and the more recent one?
We've worked on bonus depreciation for many years whenever the economy is in a downturn. Ed worked on that when he was at Gamma, and that basically just accelerates the amount of time that you're able to go and depreciate the asset that you buy, and you can take actually up to half of it up front. It is a known formula for success. Many of our manufacturers do surveys of why people buy aircraft, and many of them can come in with very solid evidence that people buy them because their business can take advantage of that bonus depreciation. We were very excited at the end of last year when the president worked out a compromise with the Congress, and we actually got what I call bonus depreciation on steroids. It's 100% expensing. So if you buy an aircraft still this year and take delivery by the end of next year, or you buy an engine or avionics, you're able to go ahead and depreciate that all up front in 1 year. Now that doesn't work for everybody, but there are a lot of corporations out there in certain tax situations that this is very advantageous. So it became very baffling to us why, after giving that to not only our industry, but also any type of manufactured products, tractors, anything that businesses use, for the president to go to Alcoa Aluminum on a Tuesday and talk about the great aluminum on those wings that brought him there to a great U.S. manufacturing company, and then the next day have a press conference and in 20 minutes vilified business aviation users as being fat cats, taking advantage of loopholes in the tax code, when simply it's using the depreciation schedules that the Congress and the administration had given to corporations to be able to buy products to renew them. And it just doesn't apply to aircraft, it applies to computers, all types of different products. So our position was, if you want to look at depreciation schedules in total for all manufactured goods, then go ahead and do so. But why single out our industry? It just does not make sense, especially if you're talking about jobs. And that's why we were able to get our labor groups being very close with us, allies in all of the pushback that we gave to the administration. Tom Buffenbarger in particular from the Machinists Union has been a great ally with us, traditionally very much aligned with the President's Party, to be able to go ahead and say, no, this is wrong, this impacts jobs. And if you're going to try to push for jobs, and if you're going to try to double exports within the next 5 years, what you're doing makes absolutely no sense. And what really we have found rewarding is the fact that when we take that message up to the Hill, both Democrats and Republicans, House members and senators, all get it. And they say, this just doesn't make sense at all if we're trying to stimulate jobs. So as you saw right now in the package that's working its way through in the Senate, they basically not looked at that depreciation schedule for aircraft alone. There'll probably be some discussions as we deal with the debt issues on overall depreciation schedules, but we should not be singled out. And so the manufacturers are working very closely with our operator community on this issue, because as I've said many times, if you attack our customers, you attack us as manufacturers. And when we're able to go up and talk about the jobs that this great industry produces out in the plants, these are high-paying, good quality jobs that produce a lot of tax revenue for our government. Why do you want to get rid of those and jeopardize our ability to grow back to the levels that we were in 2007 and 2008?
You know, Pete, you just made a point that I think is really important. In our industry, the manufacturers have a philosophy that if you attack the customers, you're attacking all of it. You know, I don't think every industry is blessed with that. I think a lot of times manufacturers say, we did the product, it's out there, let them deal with it. But I think one of the real blessings of the general aviation community is that our manufacturers get engaged in our policy fights at every level. And this one is really confounding because we have data to show that if you reduce depreciation schedules, you create jobs. Now we have a jobs bill that proposes lengthening our depreciation schedule. It just doesn't make sense. Jim, I want to talk to you a little bit because we've been talking about some of the federal policies that are coming at us, but we are seeing state-level proposals coming at us that really have the ability to devastate our industry, maybe destroy our industry. You want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing and doing in California as it relates to avgas?
Well, you're absolutely right, and it's a very, very serious attack on one of the fundamental components of our industry, and that's fuel. And those of you who are from California, I mean, many of you know as well as I that California's legal system, its proposition system, has produced a lot of unusual political activities in California. I know you're from California, so forgive me when I say this, but Prop 65 was passed back in California about 25 years ago, and it was designed to give the citizens the right to bring actions, if you will, against people who they were concerned about might be contributing some pollutant to the community. And just this past May, a company, really it's a law firm and an environmental group put together, brought this legal action against the distributors and manufacturers of aviation fuel for piston aircraft, avgas, because of the lead in the avgas. And of course, we have been working with the FAA at the federal level and the industry to try to deal with a successor fuel for leaded gas for a long time. But this one small group of people in California think that they know best, that they in California are going to somehow turn the whole country upside down and develop something for California. And effectively, what they want to do is to ban aviation gas in California unilaterally. The first step of this effort is to create a warning process. And just last week, we had the first we brought countersuit to this effort in federal court. The manufacturers and the distributors of fuel arguing that the state really doesn't have the authority to undertake this unilateral effort, that the federal government has a preemption, and that the federal government should be the body in which we debate and research and come up with alternative fuels. We tried to have the court dismiss the initial action. That hasn't happened so far, so it looks like, unfortunately, this litigation is going to continue. And I want to thank NBA and everybody up here for your support, especially the NBA regional officials, the AOPA regional folks across the country. You know, I'm often reminded of our great national motto, E pluribus unum. And you know, it really is true right here on this table. From the many in aviation, we have to create one voice, one action working together. Some of us think, well, you know, the attacks on corporate jets by the White House don't really affect the little private aviation users. Here's the kind of the converse of that, where an attack on the piston community might not affect the turbine operators, but we all have to work together to fight that. And I want to congratulate everybody who's been supporting us on this. It looks like it's going to be an expensive and time-consuming legal action to rebuff this. We're hopeful that the federal court out there will be more sane than the state courts would have been, but hard to say this, you just never know what's going to happen in California.
Well, and let me pick up on that, because you know, we have this specific threat in California, and it's a serious threat to everyone in general aviation. But regardless of how that works out, we have a challenge with avgas. And it's a challenge that is not new to us. It's a challenge that all of us have been dealing with for a long time. Craig, you mentioned earlier that there's a lot of areas where we are working closely and working well with the FAA and working well with this administration to try to address some of these issues. And I think this avgas issue, Rod, I'd be interested in your thoughts. I think this is a perfect example of where the FAA, from the administrator on down, said, let's be clear about this. This represents a safety issue, and we've got to get the safety right before we start making transitions. I know you believe that.
You bet. Well, not only does safety have to be right, you know, the economic impact of what we're going to have to deal with to keep our nation's avgas supply safe and well distributed goes far beyond, I think, just safety.